Shalom, my friend. I'm Rabbi Shimon, and what I'm about to share with you is the single most counterintuitive wealth principle in Jewish tradition. Self-made man built an empire from nothing, wanted to teach his son the secrets of wealth. He says to me, "Rabbi, how do I pass on what I've learned about making money?" Then I ask him a different question. "How many hours did you work last week?" He sits up straighter, proud. 92 hours, Rabbi. That's what it takes to stay on top." I shake my head. "That's exactly why your son won't keep your wealth." He looks offended. "What are you talking about? I built everything through hard work, through dedication, through putting in more hours than anyone else." I say, "I know, and that's the problem. Because Jewish wealth isn't built on endless hustle. It's built on knowing when to stop." Shalom, my friend. In the first teaching, I showed you why giving first creates wealth. Now I'm going to show you the second principle that makes that wealth sustainable. The principle that separates people who make money from people who build generational wealth. And this principle is going to sound even more insane than the first one. Stop working one day every week, completely, no exceptions. Before I go further, hit that like button. Comment these 4 words, "I rest to multiply," and subscribe, because what I'm teaching you here is wealth architecture that's preserved Jewish prosperity through centuries of upheaval. This isn't productivity hacking. This is ancient wisdom that compounds wealth across generations. Here's what that billionaire didn't understand. He was confusing activity with productivity. He was confusing hours worked with value created. He thought the secret to wealth was working more hours than everyone else. But that's not how the wealthiest Jewish families operated. They understood something that modern hustle culture has completely forgotten. The principle is called Shabbat, the Sabbath. One complete day every week where you stop. Completely. No work, no emails, no business calls, no thinking about business, nothing. And this practice, this seemingly counterintuitive practice of stopping when you could be producing, this is what multiplies wealth. Let me explain why, because the reasoning is profound. When you work 7 days a week, when you're always grinding, always hustling, always pushing, you're operating in survival mode, and survival mode makes terrible financial decisions. Survival mode is reactive. It sees only immediate problems and immediate solutions. It can't think long-term. It can't see opportunity beyond the urgent. It makes fear-based choices instead of strategy-based choices. But when you force yourself to stop completely one day every week, something shifts in your consciousness. You prove to yourself that the world doesn't fall apart when you're not working. You demonstrate that your value isn't just your hours. You create space for long-term thinking. And that's where wealth is actually built. Not in the hustle, in the strategy, not in the doing, in the thinking, not in the hours, in the systems. Here's what happens when you can't work one day per week. You're forced to build systems. You're forced to delegate. You're forced to create processes that work without you being present every moment. Most people never build real wealth because they trap themselves in a cycle of constant doing. They're so busy working in their business that they never work on their business. They're so busy earning that they never build anything that earns without them. But when you take one day completely off every single week, you can't operate that way. You have to build systems. You have to train people. You have to create processes. You have to make yourself unnecessary to daily operations. And that's what creates scalable wealth. That's what creates businesses that serve you instead of consuming you. That's what creates assets that generate income whether you're working or not. Let me tell you about a man I know who built a manufacturing company. Started with nothing. Worked brutal hours for the first few years, 18-hour days, 7 days a week, sacrificed everything. He came to me exhausted, burned out, successful on paper but miserable in reality. His business was making money, but he couldn't take a day off without everything falling apart. He was trapped. I told him about Shabbat, about the practice of stopping completely one day every week. He said, "Rabbi, I can't. My business will collapse. I have to be there. I have to oversee everything." I said, "Then you don't have a business. You have a job that you can't quit." That hit him, because he realized I was right. He'd built something that completely depended on him being present constantly. He hadn't built wealth. He'd built a prison. So he tried it, started taking Saturdays completely off. And at first, things did break. Problems arose that he wasn't there to fix. Customers got upset. Employees made mistakes. But here's what happened. Those problems forced him to build systems, forced him to train his people better, forced him to create processes that worked without him micromanaging, forced him to document everything so others could handle it. Within 6 months, his business was running better than when he was there 7 days a week. Within a year, he doubled his revenue while working fewer total hours. Within 2 years, he'd opened a second location because he'd built systems that could scale. He told me later, "Taking that day off was the best business decision I ever made, not despite the problems it created, because of the problems it created. Those problems forced me to build an actual business instead of just working all the time." This is what most people never understand. Wealth isn't built through constant activity. Wealth is built through leverage, through systems, through creating value that multiplies without requiring your direct involvement in every transaction. And you cannot build those things while you're grinding 7 days a week. You're too deep in the weeds, too focused on today's urgent tasks, too reactive to think strategically. Strategic rest isn't laziness. It's the highest form of productivity, because it forces you to work smarter instead of just working harder. Here's what the Jewish Sabbath practice actually does. It creates mandatory strategic thinking time, 1 day every week where you're not allowed to work, so your mind has space to process, to plan, to see patterns you miss when you're constantly busy. Your best ideas never come while you're grinding. They come in the shower, while you're walking, when you're resting, when your conscious mind stops trying to force solutions and your subconscious can work. But if you never rest, if you're always working, you never give your subconscious that space. You never access the deeper strategic thinking that creates breakthrough ideas. I've watched this pattern over and over. The people working the longest hours are rarely the wealthiest. They're often the most stressed, most exhausted, most trapped. The wealthiest people I know work intensely, but they also rest intentionally. They understand that rest isn't time wasted. Rest is when integration happens, when ideas connect, when strategy emerges. Now, let me be specific about how to practice this, because the details matter tremendously. First, choose 1 complete day every week, 24 hours, no exceptions. The specific day doesn't matter, but consistency does. Pick a day and protect it absolutely. Second, no work during that day. And I mean no work. No checking emails, no taking calls about business, no thinking about projects, no reading industry news. Nothing work-related touches that day. Third, fill that day with restoration. Spend time with people you love. Do things that energize you. Rest, play, celebrate. Enjoy life. This isn't just empty time. This is intentional restoration. Fourth, prepare in advance. You can't just stop without preparation. The day before your rest day, you handle anything urgent. You set expectations with people that you won't be available. You create space for rest by handling responsibilities beforehand. Fifth, don't cheat. This is the hardest part. Your mind will tell you that just checking one email won't hurt, that just handling one quick call is fine. Don't do it. The practice only works if it's complete. Partial rest doesn't create the same benefit. Now, here's what happens when you combine both principles. When you give first and rest strategically. This is where the multiplication happens. Giving first breaks your scarcity consciousness. It teaches you that resources flow. It shifts you from fear to trust, from hoarding to circulation, from survival thinking to abundance thinking. Resting strategically forces systematic thinking. It makes you build leverage. It creates space for strategy instead of just activity. It proves your value isn't just your hours. Together, these practices create a completely different relationship with wealth. You're not chasing money desperately. You're creating value systematically. You're not grinding endlessly. You're building intelligently. And wealth built this way lasts. Because it's not dependent on you working yourself to death. It's built on systems, on strategy, on principles that compound over time. I see so many people trying to build wealth through sheer force, more hours, more hustle, more sacrifice, and they burn out. Or they make money but lose their health, their relationships, their peace. They gain wealth but lose their life. But people who practice giving first and resting strategically, they build wealth that enhances life instead of consuming it. They create prosperity that's sustainable. They develop businesses that serve them instead of enslaving them. Here's your challenge, and I want you to actually do this, not just think about it. For the next 90 days, practice both principles together. Give 10% of everything that comes to you. First, before anything else, to people who genuinely need it. And take one complete day off every single week. No work, no exceptions. Restore yourself. Spend time on what matters. Create space for strategic thinking. Track what happens. Track how your thinking changes. Track what opportunities appear. Track how your relationship with work and money transforms. These aren't religious obligations. These are wealth principles that have preserved Jewish prosperity through every imaginable circumstance for thousands of years. They work not because they're Jewish. They work because they align with how wealth actually operates, how prosperity actually flows, how sustainable success actually builds. You want to make money? Anyone can make money through enough hustle. But you want to build real wealth? Wealth that lasts? Wealth that gives you freedom instead of trapping you? Wealth that enhances every area of your life instead of consuming it? Then give first and rest strategically. These two practices together create wealth that's built on a foundation that can't be shaken. Your soul is the blueprint. Your life is the construction. Shalom, my friend. Now go practice both and watch how everything multiplies.